And then we just had the informational workshop in January of this year. And then the public comment will be coming in April. So we'll get into later in the meeting what the next steps are, but just wanted to, and this was all time frame, if anything, on the first page pulled from their public documents that are out there. It's not, putting this, it's the facts of how things, have progressed to where we are. And again, I just thank everybody for coming tonight to learn more, and look forward to working with you, as we push to try to put a stop to this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise, for that. Denise has been really working hard on this from pretty early on. And so
I could talk hours on it, but I want to be able to get to Kevin, and there's certainly more, because it's just the most frustrating piece is the more you look at the information, the more it doesn't make sense. So, and that's why we feel strongly that the public has to take a peek at this for themselves and start to question, because there's a lot of unanswered questions that even DEM isn't giving the answers to. So,
yeah. And, I want to start with just welcoming Helene Anderson-Tay as well. She is from West Warwick. We wanted to bring both communities in since it's on the line of both communities, and it's going to directly affect those groups, especially like I noted earlier, the Greenbush area, the Stone Ridge area, the Signal Ridge area, Stone Ridge area of East Greenwich. But then, like I said earlier as well, this is Kent County. I mean, it's going to get into everybody's air. It's going to get into everybody's water. Groundwater is groundwater. If it's going down to the bay, it's going in the bay. And so, Helene, I wanted to kind of defer to you now, let you have the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about what you've been hearing and sort of West Warwick's concerns and considerations.
Hi. Okay, I wanted to point out that yes, the planning board did approve the initial build out of the facility, office space and things like that. But things have changed since the planning board met. The planning board was told that there would be no waste stored on site. That the one of the units, if they only had one unit in there, it could process 35,000 tons of waste a day, and then it could be processed in 22 hours. And so the planning board put a requirement that the waste coming in would be processed in 24 hours. The DEM, however, has authorized storage of up to 20 truckloads, 20 tractor trailer loads of waste inside the facility, and a total of 25 tractor trailer loads of waste. So that would mean like 5 would be outside the facility, and up to 20 inside the facility. So what the planning board heard and what DEM has approved are two different things. So number one, plants run most efficiently when a steady stream of waste is processed. That makes sense. This plant has to have energy, natural gas, to start the whole plant up. They're not going to be shutting it down frequently. They're going to try to keep it running 24 hours so that they don't have to spend that natural gas to restart the plant. So if you need a constant stream of waste, and that means there's going to be a constant stream of trucks coming into and leaving that area, and that's going to disrupt normal traffic, and it's going to increase noise in the area. The concept that this pyrolysis plant is a green energy plant is actually a fallacy. The plant will be following the laws of thermodynamics, and it will require more energy to process the waste than it is capable of producing from the waste. When it is converted from one form to another, some of it is always lost to the environment. That is the second law of thermodynamics. So, this is a fact, and they know it. They're going to be certainly producing some of their own energy to run the plant, but this is not a zero-sum gain on this plant. The plant needs energy to start, and it's going to need energy to continue to run. The technology is new, and the fact is we don't know what we don't know. Now they're telling you that the technology is not new. That's not true. There are new elements of this technology, and even processing this kind of waste is required new elements of this technology. So the fact that we don't know what we don't know means that we need a great deal of caution to ensure that the safety of the environment and the health of our citizens. So I think there should be a phased startup of the plant, at least 3 phases. DEM, I think, is considering an initial phase startup, but they're still talking about putting in not just 1 pyrolysis system, but 2. So I think that we need a 3-phase startup. A great deal of environmental data needs to be collected, and we should not be relying on promises and conjectures from anyone. So I think DEM should be at the plant frequently, at least twice a month, to measure the waste output from the plant. And I'm wondering if DEM can actually ensure that this is going to be done. You know, is it worth putting the community at risk while it's being figured out? Many in West Warwick would say no to that. Did we skip one?
Yep, sorry.
Thank you. DEM should review all of the written procedures that the plant will be used to operate, including how they train their employees to accept medical waste, operate the plant, measure the output of the plant and its waste products, and manage the solid and liquid waste produced by the plant. Yes, there are solid and liquid waste being produced by the plant. Not everything is going up in smoke. If the pyrolysis plant does not have written procedures and an adequate training plan, then we don't think DEM should approve the pyrolysis plant. Next. Okay, very concerned about the fire department, their ability to do their job, and the health of the fire department members. The fire departments of West Warwick and East Greenwich need to be involved with the design of this plant right now. And they should then continue to monitor the plant closely to ensure that there are no fire hazards being created. You know, I honestly, I can't imagine what trying to control a fire in a plant whose processes actually require a lack of oxygen to destroy medical waste. And there you are trying to combat that kind of a fire when oxygen is going to be part of the fire. These fire departments need to be aware of and then thoroughly understand the potential breathing hazards to their firemen. You know, if this plant should go up in flames. You know, I don't want to see a repeat of the illnesses that occurred at the World Trade Center fires, and I certainly don't want to see anybody in the area exposed to any kind of illnesses. Also, one of our former firemen, pointed out that once you know, where is all of this wastewater from the fire going to go? That wastewater is going to be contaminated. How are we dealing with that and preventing contamination of the water supply? West Warwick water treatment team needs to be involved in the design of the water waste management process that the pyrolysis plant will use. This plan is currently not clear at all on any permit applications, and it must be made clearer. If DEM approves this plant, and well, I don't want to say we hope that it never does, but we hope that they certainly take a good look at it, then a quality control engineer should report directly to the president of the company daily, so that his quality report and improvement suggestions are not influenced by a mid-level manager who is trying to save some costs. If the QC engineer doesn't report to the company president directly, or if there is not a QC engineer, then DEM should be conducting their own testing of the output of the plant at least weekly. The insurance policy needs an addendum right now, clearly covering and stating how the cleaning of the inside of the plant of all hazardous materials that might be on the floors, the ceilings, and walls would occur. It should also cover the cleanup and removal of any processed or unprocessed medical waste left at the site if the business fails. We are we do have one other technical question. Did you create a slide for that one?
I did not.
Okay. So, I've looked into this pyrolysis process, and most the plants that are currently running, they don't have different kinds of materials in that plant. They don't have a mix of things like the metal from the sharp from needles, the latex and the plastic from gloves and bags, and body parts. So their pyrolysis system is optimized to just deal with a kind of a single stream of waste, so like only plastic or only tires or something like that. This is a mixed stream of waste. One of the things that concerns me particularly is the body parts, because there's going to be a lot of water vapor from those body parts. And I'm wondering how the machinery itself is going to actually handle that vapor, if that vapor is going to cause that machinery to break down. Because now you're trying to, process water vapor and plastics and metals. So
So I'm thinking, Lily, I'm sorry.
somebody smarter than me is going to have to answer that question.
That's what I'm thinking. It's a great question because of the fact that this kind of system or similar system are being used in other ways, but that it isn't being used this way. So it's definitely a great question. I think at this point, what would be great to do is sort of segue to Kevin Boudris, who's part of the Conservation Law Foundation. I'm just going to kind of let Kevin go right into his section of this. He has some slides he's going to share with us. I'm going to close out mine, Kevin. And then what he'll plan to do is just share with you just that, how this all works, what it is, the myths, the truths, all that stuff. The important thing about a forum like this is that we all walk away really knowing more, and then we can be better advocates and better supporters of the cause. So this is the part that hopefully will answer that question, Helene, and Helene and Denise as well. But I'm going to defer right to Kevin now. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Helene, for pulling this meeting together. It really is a privilege to have the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. Thank you all so much for coming out, for your interest in this, for all of the work you've already been doing for so long in opposition to this facility. I'm just quickly going to share my screen so that I can pull a few slides up. If you just give me 1 second. All right, can everyone see that? Can you give me a thumbs up? Okay, great, thank you so much. So my name is Kevin Boudris. I work for an organization called Conservation Law Foundation, and I'll get in a bit into what we do at Conservation Law Foundation, or CLF. And so I've got a little bit to talk with you all tonight about paralysis and medical waste, and to dive into some of the facts and concerns that CLF has in particular with paralysis in facilities like the one proposed in West Warwick. And talk through some of the next steps, particularly as they relate to DEM's approval process for the medical waste treatment facility license. So, as I mentioned, I work for Conservation Law Foundation. We are a member-supported nonprofit organization. We work to protect New England's environment for all people. I've got my contact information up here on this slide, and I think it'll come up again at the end as well. And I'll distribute these slides to folks afterwards also, so that you can get all the contact info. I've also got the contact info for the director of CLF's Rhode Island office, Amy Moses, who should be back joining us on this meeting shortly. My work at Conservation Law Foundation is focused in particular on waste. I work for what we call at CLF our Zero Waste Project. where we are taking really a holistic view of the problems that come with our production, use, and waste systems, with a particular eye on the negative impacts that come along with the antiquated ways that we're dealing with our waste right now. In particular, things like landfilling and burning waste, which of course is going to be the focus of what I run through this evening. And so by way of quick agenda, and Cathy covered a little bit of this already, I'm going to give a brief overview of the pyrolysis process, some of our concerns at CLF with supposedly new technologies for quote unquote treating waste like pyrolysis. I'm going to cover some of the myths and facts around Medrecycler's proposal in particular. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to get a little bit into what's next in DEM's approval process to try to highlight a couple of ways that we can all be involved to make sure our voices are heard in that process. So kicking off with an overview of pyrolysis. The big question, of course, is what is pyrolysis? Because companies like Medrecycler and other companies that we've come across in the CLF that are trying to pitch similar technologies throughout the New England region like to shroud pyrolysis in myth. They like to pretend that this is some miracle cure to our waste problems and that pyrolysis somehow makes waste disappear and in its place creates renewable energy. All of those things are demonstrably false. Pyrolysis is, as I have up here, high heat processing of waste in the absence of oxygen to create synthetic fuels and other materials. It is in effect incineration split into two parts. Pyrolysis companies like Medrecycler like to say, oh, we're not burning, this is an incineration. They've just taken the burn process and split it in half. First, they treat waste in the absence of oxygen to create fuel. That also creates tars, oils, and other contaminants. They then take that fuel, they take those contaminants, they take the solid waste that remains, and they burn it. So they're still burning. They just create this tiny little step in the middle, where instead of going right from waste to burning, you go from waste to fuel and byproducts, and then you burn all those. At the end of the day, the result is the same. You end up with the same pollutants, you end up with the same environmental impacts, and you end up with the same energy losses. There's a lot up here on this slide. I'm not going to go through this entire flow chart, but this kind of speaks to the pyrolysis process generally, and it roughly matches up with what Medrecycler is proposing at its facility. And I have this up here just to point out that unlike this myth that pyrolysis is a closed system and nothing comes out, we just turn waste into energy, that there are a lot of places in the pyrolysis process that quite a bit is coming out of the system. And what's coming out of the system is often highly toxic. So the high heat chamber in the middle of the slide is that pyrolysis chamber. It's where after waste is shredded and dried, as they're planning on doing at the Medrecycler facility, it's again brought to a high temperature in the absence of oxygen. That results in those solid waste products like tar, slag, char, dust, and ash. And it also creates gaseous materials that they end up turning into the fuel. Those gaseous materials then need to be cleaned, so to speak. They need to be filtered because there are a lot of contaminants in there. When they pull out those contaminants, something has to happen to them. Those are nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxides, heavy metals like lead and mercury, and organic pollutants like PCBs, furan, dioxins. Medrecycler is planning on taking all those contaminants out and then burning them. So again, these things don't disappear. Something has to happen to all of them. You know, Helene spoke really eloquently earlier about the laws of thermodynamics and how they can't be violated. You can't just wave a magic wand and get rid of these pollutants. They're there, and Medrecycler is planning on disposing of them through burning. And then you end up with this fuel that is burned in a combustor, which also generates pollutants. So you've got burning at multiple instances in the process, and you end up with all of these products coming out. It is very much not a closed system. And I have this slide up here just to drive home the fact that what you end up with after pyrolysis is really the same as what you end up with in incineration. You end up with heat, obviously. You end up with solid waste like ash and char, and you end up with a lot of air pollutants. Carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, mercury, lead, dioxins, furans, all of these things are really problematic for the environment. Many of them, especially lead, mercury, dioxins, are highly toxic for humans. And so you can't just rebrand incineration and say that it doesn't have those same problems, because it very much does. And importantly, and again, Helene spoke to this a bit, pyrolysis is not renewable energy. They can call it renewable energy all they want, but it's just wrong. When you generate waste and then burn it, that is a linear process. There's no circularity in there. There's no renewing in there. You're making waste, you're turning it into fuel, you're burning it. That's not renewable. And particularly when you compare it to true renewable energy like solar or wind, burning medical waste or any type of waste releases a lot of stored carbon, especially since medical waste in particular is about 25% plastic, and most plastic is sourced from fossil fuels. So you've taken fossil fuels, you turn them into plastics, you turn them back into fossil fuels, and then you burn them. That releases a lot of carbon dioxide, and that doesn't look anything like renewable energy. It looks like you're burning fossil fuels because that's what you're doing. So to get in a little bit to Medrecycler's proposal specifically, and these are details that all of you probably know. Right now, Medrecycler, and Helene certainly talked about this as well. Right now, Medrecycler is planning on processing up to 70 tons of medical waste per day using pyrolysis. And to put that into context, if this pyrolysis facility is approved and it burns 70 tons of medical waste per day, it will be the largest medical waste burning facility in the country, the largest. There's another facility that incinerates medical waste in Curtis Bay, Maryland, that used to burn more than 70 tons a day, but nowadays it looks like it's burning less than that. So they are planning on bringing the largest medical waste burner in the country to West Warwick. And what they're planning on doing there is macerating or shredding the waste, then they dry it, and then they heat it in the pyrolysis unit, which creates, as I mentioned earlier in the flow chart, it creates the synthetic fuel, and it also creates tars, oils, solid waste. And again, Medrecycler is planning on burning all of that on site. So to get into a couple of the myths, because I really want to ground this discussion in the facts of what's actually being proposed and not some of the, I would call it greenwashing that's being spread around. Myth number one is that there isn't burning at Medrecycler's facility, and that is patently false. They're using high heat to turn medical waste into synthetic fuel and those waste products like tar. And then, as they said in the information session a few weeks ago, they're planning on burning all of that on site, burning the fuel on site, burning the tar on site. So there is absolutely going to be burning at the medical waste, at the Medrecycler facility if they get their permit. One thing that we heard on that information session a few weeks ago is that Medrecycler's emissions are going to be the equivalent of 4 cars traveling 11,500 miles over the course of the year. That is wrong. Medrecycler, in its application to DM, said that it's going to emit somewhere in the order of 20 to 21,000 tons of CO2 per year. Now, if you use the same EPA calculator that it seems like Medrecycler was suggesting it was using, that's actually equivalent to more than 4,000 cars traveling 11,500 miles over the course of the year. That is a huge discrepancy. We are not talking about some little, oh, you're only adding 4 cars, you're adding 4,000 cars. So when we're talking about whether or not this is renewable energy, let's consider the climate impacts of adding 4,000 unneeded cars to the roads. We got into this a little bit earlier, and Helene spoke to it. The myth that's been spread that Medrecycler is generating renewable energy. It's just not true. again, they're creating and then burning fuel that's made from 25% plastic, give or take, which is made from fossil fuels.
8:30.
As we, oh, sorry. My apologies for that. As I just mentioned, Medrecycler's carbon dioxide emissions are significant, 4,000 cars a year. That doesn't strike me as particularly renewable energy. And again, burning waste isn't renewable. This is a linear process. And when it comes to their emissions, there are a lot of assurances out there that Medrecycler is going to monitor the emissions. They're going to make sure this is safe. They're doing all the right testing. Well, it's important to take stock of what we're actually talking about when we're talking about that testing, because we are not talking about continuous monitoring. When it comes to dangerous emissions like those dioxins, furans, lead, and mercury, they're calculating the emissions of those pollutants based on infrequent stat testing. Right now, the notice of intent to approve from DEM, or sorry, the minor source air permit that DEM issued requires them to test once for these pollutants after it's been operating for 180 days. And they know when that test is going to happen. So they can make sure that their facility is using the ideal scenario when it comes to the amount of waste that they're putting in, that everything's operating properly. It's like their chance to shine, as opposed to continuously monitoring so they know at any given moment how much lead, how much mercury, how many dioxins are coming out of the facility. Those two things are very different. What we're talking about here is more like estimating. You know, they look at the operating conditions based on the testing that they did once to say, yeah, we think we're emitting X total of lead or mercury, when in fact they don't know for sure. And those two things, again, are very, very different. And again, to something that Helene touched on, this myth that pyrolysis is a time-tested and safe process, that, oh, pyrolysis has been used for centuries to create charcoal, so it's safe. Creating charcoal and burning medical waste are two really, really different things. That is not apples to apples. And in fact, this technology that Medrecycler is purchasing from the South African company, it has never been used on medical waste. So this is a totally new application. And like Helene mentioned, medical waste contains a lot of different stuff. And they're not peering into the boxes of medical waste that come into the facility because they're not allowed to do that. So at any given moment, they don't actually know, okay, what's the plastic makeup in here? How much liquid is in what we're treating? How much of it is anatomic waste? How much of it includes metal that's coming from sharps? They just don't know that. So when you're talking about pyrolysis that in the past has been used to treat homogeneous fuel sources like wood, using it on something like medical waste that is significantly heterogeneous, but also in a process where you don't know the given makeup of the waste on any given day, is really, really different than what pyrolysis has been used to do in the past. So having covered some of those facts and myths, as I said, I just want to touch on what's going on with the approval process when it comes to DEM's, to the the medical waste treatment license that Medrecycler is seeking from DEM, because that's really a significant part of where we are in the process right now. And a lot of this was up on slides earlier with Denise and Cathy. So Medrecycler has applied for this medical waste treatment facility license. And I have the governing Rhode Island statutes up there that they're seeking their approval under. DEM has issued a notice of intent to approve. Now, coming up on March 15th, DEM is going to hold a public comment hearing. And that is specifically on this medical waste treatment facility license. And I'll return to that in a bit, but it's important as folks are preparing for that hearing or preparing to file comments, which are due by April 14th, that anything that's submitted to DEM is specific to this permitting process. Because if it's outside this permitting process, it's not something that DEM is going to take up. So just to make sure that we're not kind of, wasting our efforts in putting things before DEM that they're not going to look at in the first place, or that they're not going to respond to. And then by July 13th, 90 days after that April 14th deadline, DEM is going to written its final written decision. And that's in that written decision is where DEM is going to respond to any substantive comments that are submitted by anyone in the community. And I'll get into in just a second what counts as a substantive comment. I have a link on this page, and again, these slides will be distributed to a DEM resource page that has Medrecycler's application on it, has a fact sheet from DEM on it, has a lot of the resources, and probably a lot of you have already been to this page, but just so that it's here for everyone. It's important to note at this stage in the process that this is not a done deal. DEM has issued this notice of intent to approve. They have not approved the facility. There's ample opportunity to raise issues with DEM that could impact the result, that can change what happens, that can prevent this permit from this license from being issued, or could modify, the final license that is issued. And there are several outstanding requirements that remain in that notice of intent. So Medrecycler still has to do a lot and prove a lot to DEM before it can get this license. So on the issue of what is a substantive comment, because DEM is only going to respond again to those substantive comments that it receives. It's important to note that non-specific objections aren't substantive. So, raising a concern that's just about noise, something like that, doesn't get to this medical facility license permitting process. The substantive comment, to be substantive, a comment needs to relate to the particular license application into decisions within DEM's authority. And ultimately, the more detail that we all put in our comments, the better, so that DEM has specific things to respond to, specific concerns. And as I advance here, I'm going to touch on just quickly, and again, all this information is going to be in slides that are distributed, what is within DEM's authority when it comes to these medical waste regulations and the medical waste facility licensing process. So under the governing medical waste regulations, DEM has to find that the destruction and treatment of waste are in a single self-contained process that doesn't place employees or the public at risk. So again, any comment that speaks to the process and potential risks from the shredding, drying, and pyrolyzing, then burning of medical waste speaks to what is actually within DEM's authority here. And by the same accord, DEM has to find that the treatment and paralysis process is protective with respect to the total impact on the environment, and that it ensures health, safety, and welfare of employees and the general public. So again, comments that speak to concerns about this specific paralysis process and the shredding and the drying that Medrecycler is planning to do, and how that relates to total impact on the environment and health and safety of people that live nearby, those are things that are within DEM's authority. DEM also has authority here under solid waste regulations that have been implemented by Rhode Island. And under those regulations, the facility has to be designed, operated, and maintained in a way that protects personnel and protects people in close proximity to the facility. So again, speaking to specific concerns about the design of the waste processing facility and how it may or may not protect people nearby, are things within DEM's authority. Contrast those types of concerns with, concerns about it not complying with zoning regulations in West Warwick, or not complying with noise rules, or the number of trucks that are going to be driving into the facility to drop off waste. Those are things that are outside. the specific look that DEM is taking here. So it's important to kind of do what we can to gear our comments to that. And that's something that I would be happy to talk with folks on an individual basis and follow-up meeting, just to make sure we're doing everything we can to hone in what we're saying. And I already touched on these things, but again, the noise concerns, not complying with zoning laws, concerns about truck traffic, those are outside DEM's authority in this particular process.
Kevin?
Especially when it comes to zoning issues. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
Just a quick question. Because that's something that I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm sure other people are as well. It's always lovely to have like form letters and things where people can sort of send something in, but this makes it a little bit harder in some ways to sort of know exactly what to say to be heard, and to have to take the time, because I know it's important to make the DEM have to work and think about this. So if someone has something that they maybe write up, can they shoot it to you in an email and you can kind of just say, yep, this is substantive, or no, it's not, or is there someone else? And we can kind of, if you don't have an answer to that, you can think about it and let us know at the end of the meeting. But I'm just wondering, when let's say I go to write something, is this going to be something that the DEM is going to cover, or am I wasting my time and I should think of something else?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy, and others at CLF are also happy to take a look at materials like that. When it comes to the type of form letter, as you mentioned, there is value in that. If a letter speaks to specific concerns that DEM is going to take, and many people send that same letter in, or there are dozens of signatories on that letter, it still has an impact. DEM is only going to respond to it once, and in fact, DEM often will lump concerns together. So if several people raise similar concerns in its response document, DEM is going to try to kind of cover all of those with like a big response that touches on all the issues. But when you have form letters, when you have action alerts that people click to send something to DEM, when people all sign together on a letter, it does, show DEM the level of concern. And DEM is only, going to be responding to specific factual issues that are raised, but it matters, though a lot of people reach out to them. It has an impact. It doesn't show up somewhere in the math, somewhere in the calculus, but there certainly is no downside to as many people as possible voicing their concerns, even if it's in a way that's duplicating other concerns, or on a sign-on letter or a form letter. And kind of emphasizing that point about as many people as possible making their voice heard. We touched on these dates earlier, but there's going to be that March 15th public hearing, and as many people as possible that come to that hearing and voice their concerns, the better. And that could end up being a very long hearing, going late into the night, but good. Good for DEM and the company to see how many people come out and raise concerns about the facility. And again, any written comments are due by April 14th. But of course, there's broader things to do here. Contacting local and state elected officials to voice their concerns. Obviously, elected officials in West Warwick and East Greenwich have already heard quite a bit about this facility. No reason for them to not hear more. And let your state representative or your state senator know that this is something that you care about. Do everything we can to get as many people involved in the levers of power in the state paying attention to this and concerned, and possibly raising their own concerns or elevating your concerns. And this is a year that there's going to be statewide legislation on paralysis and gasification. There will be bills that try to make it easier for these types of facilities to be built in the state. And there will be bills that make it harder for these types of facilities to be built. Any opportunity that folks can take advantage of to testify either in opposition or support to those bills makes a difference. And again, it shows our legislative bodies that people are paying attention to this, that they care, and that they're tuned in, because obviously all of you are really tuned in to this issue right now. So everything that we can do to leverage that, not just in trying to make sure that concerns with respect to this facility are addressed, but doing everything that we can to make sure that we're building a clean, healthy, safe Rhode Island that is very careful about opening its doors up to things like pyrolysis, gasification, or any other type of burning waste.
And I know that Kevin, you had noted when you and I had spoken sometime a few weeks ago that once a facility like this is in, it's hard to get rid of it. It's hard to control it. They grow pretty quickly, and it becomes, if it's going to become a problem, it's hard to then control the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is not that it is ever easy to prevent a facility from being built, and not in any way saying that, you know, that's what would happen here, because there's a lot of processes to play out, and we need to do what we can to, again, make our voices heard. But once a facility is in, it's really hard for that facility to shut down, even if they're not, you know, for a lot of permit violations or license violations, the remedy isn't shutting down the facility. Facilities are often fined. Sometimes the fines amount to a little more than a slap on the wrist, and they're allowed to lock themselves into these pay to pollute systems, where we violate our permit, we'll pay a fine, and we'll keep operating, when that doesn't really do anything to help or protect the people that live near the facility. So, you know, these are the moments, these are the opportunities to have the greatest impact.
And just to circle back to the sending, you know, because obviously the first step in this process right now for all of us is to definitely sort of let DEM know, because that's where it's sort of sitting right now, is that permitting process. Obviously attend the March 15th Zoom meeting, let our voices be heard, let our concerns be heard. But does it make sense to, even if your concerns are the trucks, even if your concerns are the noise, and if they don't answer you, does it still kind of make them think, even if you send those in and there's lots of those too, or is it just kind of poo-pooed if it's not the level of content that make them have to answer us?
Well, I was just going to say, though, with regards to about the trucks and things, when it shifts to the town ownership, start sending those to the West Warwick Town Council now about the trucks, the concerns. If DEM's not going to answer, there's someone that certainly has to. So, you know, start communicating with all different levels of government. Or would you agree, Kevin?
Absolutely, I would agree. And thank you for saying that, Denise. And I apologize for not making that more clear earlier, because I don't want it to sound like, oh, if you've got concerns about truck traffic or noise, like, just tuck them under your mattress because nobody cares.
No, and I don't look at that.
Not,
it's just, to make it clear, because everybody, the one question I get is, what do I write? Could you write it? I want other people's voices to be heard. I can help as you can. We could put a draft together, but there's a lot of different layers, a lot of different concerns, and a lot of different dots that don't connect. And that's why, you know, we're here. And I send a letter, you know, an email a day. There are questions that I have for the town, East Greenwich Town Council, West Warwick Town Council, our state officials, DEM. I sent at least 4 different aspects of things don't make sense. They have, you know, documents out there from Medrecycler that I don't see answers to. Where are their answers? Multiple times DEM has said you haven't provided enough information. So where are the answers? And even in their summary information from February, they say Medrecycler has not provided sufficient testing documentation. If this is so safe, why don't you have the testing protocols ready to roll? That's not acceptable, because when this gets in, if DM was to approve in that testing period, we are the ones who are going to be the guinea pigs for whatever comes out of that facility. If something goes wrong, we are going to know about it. And, you know, it's the wrong place to test something out.
And I think
prices.
Yeah, there's a lot, and I think there's a lot of ways to sort of go about this. One thing I want to kind of let everybody here know, and I'll put it up at the end, is there'll be a contact page What I recommend is maybe taking a screenshot of it on your phone or something. That will at least have some information for you to go to, whether it's joining the Facebook pages or also getting in touch with certain members of the community who might have some influence in decision making. And I'll have the DEM's information. In those Facebook pages too, we will put together 4 letters that you can send that will, and you can pick and choose. We'll put a few together. Maybe even Kevin can help us with a few at some point in the near future, but we'll go back to that. But I just wanted to sort of finalize that so that people understand that there is actions you can take, and even immediately sending the DEM, a concerned email, and the person you send it to will be in that contact sheet at the end of this meeting. And also, town council members in West Warwick, certainly it's a little premature in terms of them making decisions so far on the final permits, but it could let them know that you're concerned. But I wanted to kind of start with some of the questions that we have here that people who are part of the group have asked.
And Cathy, just on the questions, I think maybe this is a Zoom quirk. I got it set up partway through so that the questions would just go to the hosts. But I think they went just to me. I don't think they went to Cathy and you also.
I can see them.
Oh, you can't. So you can see the direct messages starting at 7:11.
Possibly.
I can see from
The first
7
one I see
all the way through
is Silverman.
Okay, yeah, and then there are others I think that only I can see, that after we go through those first ones, I'll kind of read off and make sure we get to those.
Sounds great. Now it's about 8:05 now. We were planning for this meeting to go till about 8:30, so we'll get through what we can. We hope you'll stick around. We know that this is a lot of information, and we respect that you all may have had long days, but we hope you'll stick with us and kind of just hear a little bit more about anything that someone else might be asking, because you might just learn something else, or it might give you some sort of action that you think you can do. So the first one was, please explain how the Warwick Planning Board can make a finding that there's no environmental impact from this technology without further explanation. Kevin, basically the West Warwick Planning Board, what they're saying is that there's no environmental impact from the technology and there's no explanation.
Yeah, that one, I do not have an answer to that question. To be frank about it, the West Warwick Planning Board decision, which was a while ago, was something that I didn't have insight into. I think, and especially when it comes to kind of separating out the different buckets of concerns and where they should go, that type of concern regarding the planning board process is definitely something that should go to the town of West Warwick. And especially when it comes back around for its business license, the type of thing that needs to be asked of the town of West Warwick, and concerns like that need to be made clear to the council.
Yeah, I think the important thing there is direct emails, direct phone calls to that crowd if you have concerns. They've kind of done one decision in this process to allow the company to sort of do an initial build, access to the building and lease, and so they've certainly started their process of building, but it's not something that's definitive yet. So once the DEM moves with their decision, if they approve, then it goes back to West Warwick, and that's when West Warwick would need to certainly be approached to try and make sure that they are aware of concerns. But if you have any concerns now, or you're not happy with something that they handle, I would certainly direct the concerns to them by email, and they'll be the town council's information in each one of their emails will be at the end of this presentation. Some of the other things I'm thinking that I'll go to now that Kevin, you might be able to speak to would be, let's see, what would be more effective to, no, that's actually, someone asked about the form letter. We've already kind of addressed that. Signature form letter or multiple signatures on a letter. I think that Kevin kind of already addressed that, where either one is good. I mean, if you do separate letters, great. They have to answer them if there's substantive information from the DEM. But if we do group multiple signature letters too, they can be effective in letting them know that there's lots of people who are concerned. How will the burning particles impact Interstate 95 passing traffic and so forth? I think the person's probably also wondering, like, does it get on the cars and then it goes other places and now it's traveling?
Sorry, what was that question again? I didn't quite follow.
How will the burning particles impact Interstate 95 and passing traffic? It also could be the concern about burning and maybe visibility.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's hard to say how this specific facility could, you know, influence or could impact I-95. You know, I will say that, you know, these types of facilities, especially when it comes to visibility on 95, these types of facilities generally do not emit visible emissions, which is often one of the sneaky qualifiers that industrial sources of pollution like to use. Oh, there aren't any visible emissions. Of course, invisible emissions can be very harmful. You don't have to be able to see smoke coming out of this facility for there to be pollutants that are going to be harmful. But with respect to what visible emissions could be coming out of the facility, how that could impact visibility on I-95, I mean, that is very much an unknown and something, you know, something that certainly I can't answer right now. But of course, speaks to the level of testing that still needs to happen here when it comes to, you know, being certain that this is actually going to work as it's been proclaimed by the company to work.
Another question is New England Tech engaged? Do we have any media interest in this project? Denise, that might be something that you or
they are involved in the litigation with the town, so I don't think, you know, we could speak to that. Kevin, I don't know if you've been in any meetings. You know, when you watch the planning board meeting, again, there's a casualness to, well, is there anything to worry about, Nick? No, there's nothing to worry about. And oh, we're gonna throw you, well, we'll hope to hire some of your you know, your kids. So when they were initially introduced to the project, it wasn't the scope of what it is now, but they share the concerns. You know, they have a campus, you know, of students that they're responsible for. So this definitely is on their radar. And you know, they, you know, it's caught everyone's attention for sure. And, you know, so they are in the loop with the town right now with the litigation, so.
And one of the things, just to note, one of the actions that we will hope to do in the near future and hope people can kind of engage with us and let us know if they might get involved is to inform all of those businesses right around there. There's a lot of businesses, just as, you know, Dave's Market, Dunkin' Donuts, there's a Lifespan clinic right nearby. So what, as a group, and this is a pretty good sized group here, what we hope is that you guys can join the Facebook pages that we have going if you haven't already, and look for these action things, because one of the things we will do, just like with New England Tech, is we want these neighboring businesses to be aware of what this is. We want them to start to be concerned if they're going to get concerned, and so that they voice their opinions and they let legislators know, and they, you know, they will hopefully stand beside us and support, you know, the fight to kind of block this from going through. Because the more people can get involved, the more people we can kind of speak up against it, the more effective it'll be. And, you know, we need businesses to say, we're okay with business, but we're not okay with these kind of businesses. So that's one of the things we'll definitely be doing. So be looking for those action requests in the near future. And it may just literally mean, here's a form letter. Would one of you be willing to walk into Dunkin' Donuts and drop it off for the owner? Or will you go to Dave's Market or Savory Grape or some of the other places nearby and drop these notes off, these bullet lists of things that might be concerned about. There's daycares right nearby. I know someone here asked, my daughter's daycare is right next door to this place. How concerned should I be? How do I let DEM know? Is that something? Her exact question is, my daughter's daycare is next to the building. Is this something I address to the DEM? The playground is directly next to this building.
And we've been in touch with the owners of that daycare, as well as there's one right next to Cardi, to alert them. And, a lot of people are putting faith in the DEM process, but I think as we're peeling back in the layers of that process, this is new. This is new territory for them as well. And I'm not sure that, in my opinion, I don't think that the process is being navigated as carefully as it could be. Again, just based on statements that I've seen on their website, on the letters, there's not documentation on the testing. So how can you tell the community that there will be no issues with odors of dioxins and the long-term effects of those on the surrounding communities? So, certainly raise the questions to the daycare, raise the questions to DEM, raise the questions to anyone who will listen, because somewhere along the way, someone has to have an answer. And up to this point, no one does, because it hasn't been tested. Kevin's provided great information on the facts about pyrolysis, regardless of what they want to say, how safe it is. Most, on the DEM call, there was a subject matter expert who deals with these types of facilities and is like, well, I dealt with them in the past, but they're typically on a remote area where you might test the heck out of it. Once you know it's safe, then you can look to expanding. You don't put it right around the corner from a Dunkin' Donuts to start out of the gate. This is South Africa. They're using the pyrolysis process. It has not been tested or used for medical waste. And as I looked at one of the other proposals, they were even talking about that this could do mattresses and things. So I'm not sure what the long-term plans are for this company. As the different things that you listen to, there are different things that are said, or if you look through the documentation, and it's in their documentation, in notes. The scope changes, the details change. And at this point, if you've been working on this from 2018, we should have some assurity that we know what's going to go on there. And I don't think that we do. Come to the DEM, ask Mr. Campanella the questions. He defers to a gentleman called Richard in South Africa. But yet Mr. Campanella and his wife are going to be running the facility here on the ground. If you're running the facility here on the ground, you should know the process in and out by now, because if you're going to be the ones responsible. So I don't know if that answered the question with regards to that, Kevin, if you have anything to add with regards to the daycare, but.
I mean, I'd love to just echo two things that both you and Cathy said. I mean, one is, involving as many different, one, people obviously, but businesses that are nearby. And you've done a lot of that outreach, but you've got the daycare center, you've got the lifespan clinic that's nearby. There's a veterinary clinic that's not far away. As many of those, if those are businesses that are willing to get involved and have their voice heard, or if they're employees or people that use the services there are, I mean, those are meaningful, impactful voices in this process. And then speaking to something you said, Denise, about not knowing, what they're going to burn, are they going to move on to something else? Now, certainly this application they've made is to process, treat, pyrolyze, and in effect burn medical waste. But this is something that the work that we have done at CLF with respect to companies that want to burn waste, this is something we see all the time. They want to burn everything they can get their hands on, because that's how they make money. If there isn't enough medical waste, if they're not able to come up with the contracts to bring in 70 tons a day to be able to operate the facility all the time, obviously this is pure speculation.
No, but actually,
the company will pivot to try to get a permit to burn other types of waste.
Well, from the Technical Review Committee minutes from April 17th, 2019, Mr. Campanella explained that this is a fairly new technology out of South Africa, and that the process could utilize such products as mattresses and sludge. Didn't say, he's going to do it here, but it can be done. 48,000 square feet, 500,000 square feet to expand. Again, we can make assumptions, but they're things that have been said on record with regards to what it can do. And then again, he explains it's fairly new technology out of South Africa. And this is April 17th, 2019, back when he went to the board in West Warwick. It's been done all the time, back to the, so it's you tick and tie the information and make judgment for yourself. That's what we're asking the public to do.
And I think in the end, the daycare concern, I would, if you go to the Facebook page, you definitely can get some information there that you could bring to the owner of the facility and sort of educate him or her a little bit about how concerned they should be. And I would also, if it were me, I'd stand outside and tell other parents as they're walking in, put a mask on and let people know, hand them a flyer and say, this is a concern. And, I think the more people that have concerns, the better, because then you can get those people to write a letter and say, if nothing else, I'm concerned. This isn't cool. My child's daycare is around the corner from this place.
If you know anyone at the West Warwick daycare, let us know. We'll help to educate them as well, because we were talking with the one right here, and then they're like, well, do you know there are 180 kids right on the West Warwick side who would also be impacted? And I'm not sure how much knowledge those families have, but
definitely let us know, if you have questions or if you want us to put something together for you for a situation like that, for sure. Another thing, someone else mentioned, let's see, seems that our prevailing southeasterly winds will send emissions directly over the Situate Reservoir. Has this been considered?
That type of concern regarding prevailing winds and where the emissions end up would probably, if that were looked at or analyzed, it would have likely been a part of the minor source air permit that DEM has already granted, which is, it's unfortunate on a couple levels that that's already happened, that was not a process that was open to public comment or a hearing or any of the types of things that are available to all of us now as a part of the medical license application, which is too bad. So I don't know if that's something that's been looked at or what the potential impacts could be there.
Actually, and one other question that someone raised, and I don't know if it's because it was a minor air source permit, whether or not the EPA had to get involved, but it was, has EPA been charged to measure the air quality for ozone hazards? That was a question that someone had.
Yeah, I saw that question, and it's something that I certainly want to dig in further on. And Denise, you sent me
There's a monarch facility, and just to let everyone know, there is a similar type of facility that's being used in New Mexico. Again, it's a different proprietary system, but I do have to say, I've seen some of their documentation, and it's more comprehensive than anything I've seen from Medrecycler to date. But their process, the EPA was involved. There were some air, the sniff test issues. That's the one where I referred to in some documentation. But I also found something where they went through a full EPA process that we're not even discussing here. And I have reached out to Kevin to ask, is it something because it was a minor air source permit, or because different states, different regulations and things? So that is, it's a good question, and another layer, I guess, to peel back.
And a question that should be directed where? Would you know that, Kevin or Denise?
For the EPA? Kevin, is that something we tackle first and then tell us where to go with it, or should we be?
Yeah, it's something that I'm happy to at least take an initial look at, see what I can find. I mean, it may be a question that it ends up being worth asking DEM, not as a part of this comment period, but as an informal question seeking an educational response as to what's what's the deal? Does EPA have to be involved in here? Because it seems from this process and from and from things that DEM has said that there is no EPA jurisdiction here. That all of this is governed by state and West Warwick processes. But a little bit of clarity on that would be helpful, and I could start by looking at that.
Yeah, and if you get anything like that, Kevin, and we can update people on that on the Facebook page, or that would be great. Just if you could let us know. And anything that we're discussing tonight, know that we'll kind of follow up with whatever answers we can get, any kind of questions that we have here that we know, oh, we didn't answer that well, we weren't able to. We'll definitely plan to sort of dig a little deeper and try to post those answers
Cathy,
on the Facebook pages.
Renew is raising her hand, and I'm not sure if she has an answer to something that was just mentioned. Renew Engelhardt, see her, I don't know, let me see.
She lowered her hand, so I think she's.
I don't know. Can you hear me or?
Yes, yep.
I'm with the East Greenwich Town Council. East Greenwich our litigation is over the fact that we were not allowed public comment during the minor air permit situation. That is one of the things that we are, we're still in litigation with them over, and also the fact that we are very concerned over the traffic pack. DOT has flagged both intersections around 1600 Division as high accident areas. I mean, that's in their last, significant traffic study, which is from 2013, but still pretty bad. And I know that the Route 2 Division, Route 4 interchange is one of the worst in the state. So, that is something also that I'm personally concerned about, since I live on Division, but also that East Greenwich would be concerned about it as well. The fact that, I know that they're using proper haulers, but we have no way of knowing, who's hauling. And it seems that it's self-policed. So anyways, I don't know if you could speak to that, or if you have any thoughts on that, or, we're looking at it with our town solicitor as well.
Great, and that's good to know that was a concern in terms of how that kind of just slid through and wasn't really handled in a way that was correct. And I know that the EG Town Council kind of jumped right on that, so that's great. Again, anything that we can kind of update you all on, we will, as we go through and continue to sort of look at these questions and look at these comments and try to get further information. Some of the other things on here, and I'll just then defer to Kevin with questions that might be in the direct message component of this. I know that there's a few comments, with just concerns about the West Warwick Town Council members, and just making sure they're really aware that they should be concerned about this. If you are a West Warwick resident, or if you're an East Greenwich resident, I would definitely reach out to your council members, and either through email or through a phone call. And let them know your concerns, even though they're still not quite where they'll be in terms of making a decision. It's good to give them a heads up. And so I wanted to kind of mention that, because there's a few comments about, specific council members, and just sort of the concern that they might be supporting this and really happy about it, and, maybe informing them and teaching them a little. I know that in Burrillville, the town of Burrillville was all for a facility there that was really going to be environmentally problematic. And once these kind of forums started to happen and people started to really learn about this stuff, they actually shifted the town's focus and stance, and moved them in a direction where they ended up starting to fight the facility that originally they were bringing into their town. So letting your town council members know is going to definitely be important. EG people, we already have council members who are sort of opposed to this, but letting your town council members know in West Warwick is definitely important. And one other comment before I defer to you, Kevin, was just in general that SunTrust Corporation, really isn't a company that Rhode Island probably wants to work with. Someone noted that they're being insolvent, that the owner, Nick Campanella, is in debt, and the company itself is really, they're 100% relying on this going through to avoid bankruptcy. I mean, I've seen some government papers that they had to file several years ago, and basically say, if this doesn't go through, we are bankrupt. So it is another situation where it's concerning that the company that we're potentially working with as a state isn't even a very strong, solid company to even be working with. So the question was, do we have assurance that they will have compliance from Medrecycler? If, you know, I said, how can we be assured that all the testing for DEM and following protocols will be accomplished? Do we have assurance that we will have compliance with Medrecycler? And I don't believe we do. They definitely are selling themselves as a very viable, very successful company. And so I don't think that that's definitely not something that they're bringing up, and didn't seem to be something that the DEM was concerned about at their last meeting.
You know, while I can't really speak to the solvency or insolvency of SunTrust Corporation or Medrecycler, what I can say is that if there are concerns about whether or not protocols are being followed, or if there, you know, folks want to make sure that DEM is ensuring that they're doing the right, that they're following the right protocols, that they're doing the right testing, that they're following all the procedures that they're supposed to, folks should reach out to DEM with those concerns. And, you know, we can help identify who specifically would be the best person at DEM to reach out to with those concerns. But before, you know, this type of facility is cited, in the process of building it out, and if they get the permits that they need, making sure that they're following all the right rules and that DEM is watching them should continue to be an open process, such that we should all take every opportunity available to us to let DEM know if there's a concern, if there is a concern that there's non-compliance happening at the facility, if there are odors, if there's equipment or trucks or activity that's not supposed to be happening at the facility going on. I mean, everyone should take advantage of opportunities to, let's say, check in with DEM to make sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to, because that's an important part. Public oversight of that kind is important in all of this, and it's a role for, you know, for all of us to play.
Should they be getting back with those answers prior to the meeting? Because again, going back to this document, a point that I raised, and this further confirms that this is the misinformation. This is from April 17th, 2019. And in it, they say there will be no waste stored on site, trucks will be unloaded, material processed, trucks will depart. Mr. Campanella responded that there would be no storage, that the state required the waste to be processed within 24 hours. You go to the approval notes from DEM, and I have highlighted this, is why. And they say that the Medrecycler shall store the medical waste in a secure manner and process the received medical waste within 14 days. At any time, no more than 20 containers of regulated medical waste shall be stored inside the facility. No more than 25 trailers of regulated medical waste shall be on site. Medrecycler shall accept no more than 70 tons. So how do we go from we're not doing it, and it's in their application, to DEM saying, well, you can store? And I had asked that question because that is, we're supposed to be trusting you with the process, but something is being missed in the translation, and maybe I'm not understanding correctly, and this is just a caveat that they're throwing in there. I have asked them for a response, but that's a big detail to not know for the public, saying that it's not going to be stored, so that they can, and they most likely will. So is DEM trying to cut, so it's, again, another question that was raised and I haven't heard an answer, but I'd like an answer before we go to public comment. And so that I could, or will I not get one? Or will the public, when people find like stuff like that, is it just we wait and see, or that some action could be taken on a higher level at DEM to say, why is this so inconsistent at this point?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And in the vast majority of instances, any kind of concerns that you're raising with DM about the permitting process, about the notice of intent to approve, about the application, any of that stuff, DM is not going to answer most of those or any of those until it issues its final decision, at which point it responds to those substantive comments. So, these types of concerns aren't things that DM is going to respond to before the March 15th hearing. That March 15th public comment hearing is really a one-way street, so to speak, in that the public has an opportunity, we all get on the Zoom call and we'll have a chance to direct our concerns to DM, but they're not going to be questions back to us. That's not a dialogue. It's just another format in which to raise concerns, raise substantive comments to them. It's all part of the record. It's all recorded. So there are things that if they're substantive comments, they have to respond to in the final decision making. But it's unlikely, other than in some rare, unforeseen circumstance, that DM is going to kind of respond to any of this before their final decision. They kind of like take everything in and then lump it all together at the end, which I know can be frustrating.
But just if we don't get the answer that we like, or we don't get an answer that we still feel like that the people who are looking out for us aren't looking out for us, then what course of action? And I guess we could cross that bridge when we get to it, because I want to let other, get an opportunity to answer other people's questions. But it is a big, when you see blatant things in this process that do not make sense, and we don't have the authority to get a proper answer until they feel like it, and then they make a decision, and that's part of the process that I would like to learn more about is, where are our interests really being looked at? Because it's clearly not within this process, from the oversight that many have seen. And it's not just myself, everybody else that I looked at, am I going crazy? And they're like, no, nothing makes sense. Because the documentation is so, inconsistent. And even with the DEM, you would think they say no storage, we approve no storage, but now you're saying they can store all this on site. So what did I miss?
The other issue along with that is that DEM is doing an end run around the West Warwick Planning Board, because the West Warwick Planning Board was told two things. One, that the waste would be, all of the waste coming into that facility would be processed within 22 hours. And the second thing that the West Warwick Planning Board was told was that there would be no chimney. Well, I got news for you. If you're burning something, you got to have a chimney. So there's, we've got DEM here actually doing, not informing the planning board what's going on, and not giving the planning board the opportunity to change its mind.
Well, just for a little bit of information on that, I think it is frustrating, especially with all these different levels of sometimes overlapping, but often separate governments and government agencies. DM is kind of locked into its own process. So they get this application, they respond to it, whether or not, the West Warwick Planning Board approved something that may be different than what's in this application. I think that ends up being an issue that goes back to the town of West Warwick. If Medrecycler has changed its position and is planning on doing something different than what the planning board approved in West Warwick, that's going to be something.
At least be in their application. It's not even in their application. Their application says they shouldn't store on site. So it's a big, but their application also says they're taking waste in from Johnston. So, maybe DEM, didn't mean to interrupt you there, but it's very there's clearly says one thing, and we're even, to the step back to what Helene said about the planning board, but just even in the application that's on the DEM site, it's, but I'll let you, if you guys want to jump into any other questions.
Yeah, I want to, because it's 8:38, I want to kind of respect people's time. The first thing I want to do is ask Kevin just quickly, are there quite a few direct questions, or was there just a couple at this point, or where are you at with?
I think, I think my concern wasn't accurate. You covered a lot of questions that I saw. I had thought they were coming into directly to me, but the fact that you asked them makes it clear that they were coming into everyone. I will say that there are, there are questions in here that we didn't all get to, which again, as Cathy pointed out, we're already over time. We want to respect folks' time. We don't want this meeting to run on forever. We are saving this chat afterwards so that, we can get Denise, Cathy, myself can get back to folks with answers to the extent that there are kind of pending questions, outstanding issues from this meeting.
And Cathy, I don't know if you have your question.
If you have a question on here that we didn't get to, and I'm not, we will definitely answer them on the Facebook pages. Once you are a Facebook page, the Facebook page member, either the public one or the private one, you could just you could literally cut and paste this question and ask us directly as well. And just be aware too, this seems like it's overwhelming. We felt the same way in the beginning. It feels a little bit, especially with the DEM, that it's going to be a real uphill battle, and it kind of is. But know that there's definitely some guidance from us. If you, and I keep going back to the Facebook pages, that's really the place to go for following us and keeping information kind of coming in that you want to learn. Again, how the actions that you can take with us, along with us, form letters that you can sign and send in yourself, things that Kevin might send us that will guide you through the process of sending something that really is a substantive letter, or even like, can someone be the one to call the Audubon Society and let them know where we're at and what we're concerned about, and if they'd be willing to sort of consider us as a cause that they'd support. It can be those kind of things too, and we will not leave you to not be guided through the process. We just need people engaged and involved. I'm going to share right now just the screen that I told you earlier I would share. It's that contact share sheet. It's just a basic set of information. It's Kevin and Amy information at the Conservation Law Foundation. If you want to direct questions, write to him or to Amy. We're happy to have you do that. You'll also see the Facebook the names of the 2 Facebook pages that you can join. If you are interested in joining those, again, those are updated pretty regularly. This meeting was on those so people could find it. And we will continue to, like I said, answer questions and refer to comments that were made tonight. Then there's the information for the DEM. Jan Lee is the person you should direct your concerns and questions to. Like Kevin said, try your best to make it something that is part of the permitting process for the DEM, but know that you can send other things too. If you're just mad about the trucks, send them a letter about the trucks. The more letters they get, the more concerns they get, the more they'll at least realize people are paying attention. And Denise really knows a lot about what's going on right now, and she will certainly be adding more and more information about that kind of content component. Like, have they dropped the ball on something? Can we call them out on something? Is there something that they should have done that they didn't do? Are there conflicting things on the thing that they approved and the thing that they should have, the application process? So be looking for those. And then you're going to see at the bottom in the blue that there's just the noted West Warwick Town Council members. Those are people who some are in support of this and think it's a great idea because it's money for the town. Whether it's a lot of money or not, it doesn't seem like it on paper, but who knows? And so that's certainly those are places you can start right now when you leave here. If this has sort of shocked you, if this is information that made you think, wow, this is concerning. I do not want this in my backyard. I don't want this. I don't want this, even if it's 3 miles. I mean, I don't live anywhere near this in East Greenwich, but I know that my friends do, and I know that my husband's neighborhoods that he grew up in West Warwick are being affected by this. So, it's part of our community responsibility to sort of say, you know, I live in East Greenwich, but you at West Warwick, your town council members really should hear from us as well. So I thought I heard someone say something, Kevin said something. So just know that we, that's there. Hopefully people were able to take a screenshot of it. That anything that you saw tonight will be on our, on the Facebook pages. The slides will be there in the form that they're in. The contact information sheet will be there. And you know, anything that you kind of saw this evening or they heard this evening, the questions in the comments will all be there. So make sure you like that. If you're trying to get in touch with us, you can always sort of go through Kevin and see if that you can make some connections if Facebook isn't your thing. Is there anything else that Kevin, Denise, you kind of wanted to share? Because I'm ready to kind of wrap it up. I appreciate people's time. It's 8:44 at this point, and I hope this was really as helpful and informative as I know it's been for me.
Kevin, do you want to go? Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
You know, the one thing I'll add or return to is that the process can seem frustrating and opaque. You know, it certainly can. But I want to re-emphasize again that this isn't a done deal. DEM has not yet finally approved this. This facility still needs a business license from West Warwick. All of this is, it can be a bit much, it can be scary, and it can often feel like voices aren't being heard. But the more that all of us do together, working, you know, with each other, and Conservation Law Foundation, you know, intends to be there working alongside the community and taking direction from what the great work that all of you are doing. Working together, you know, we can do what we can to have an influence on the process. And it's just so super important. And I really thank you so much for inviting me to be here tonight to share this work with you all, and to really be a part of this, because I appreciate the opportunity to work with dedicated, passionate folks who are doing everything they can to protect the communities like you all are. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you, Kevin, and thank you to Amy for you know, for taking the time to, you know, to work alongside of us, as you said. And just in the spirit of what Kevin said, you know, we can make a difference, and our voices will be heard with this. It's you know, the momentum that has grown just in, you know, over this time, now that we're all kind of getting out of the COVID haze and people are really awake that this is still here, it's still going on, and it will not go away unless we continue to stay engaged. So, you know, greatly appreciate, you know, the petition has over 2,000 signatures. Keep it going. You know, I remind everyone at the levels I send that petition out every free chance I get. It's growing. You know, send your letters, get your responses out. You'll get the blatant response, but if you have another thought, send another one. Do your research, look at the facts. It doesn't make sense, ask why. Keep asking why until we get the answers, because, you know, this is our, you know, we live here. This is our community. We want to keep Kent County beautiful. We don't want to see these types of things coming in under the guise of green energy. So you want to own a part of the process, let us know. Take it, run with it. We can educate you. This is collaborative. I've met a lot of wonderful people, West Warwick and East Greenwich. So we can do this together. We all live here. It's all part of our community. And just thank you everyone for their time tonight, and for, you know, for the time, any time that you can give, you know, in the months ahead to tackle this. So thank you.
And
And
again,
thank you for organizing this and getting it all.
And just everyone, just be reaching out to us if you have any questions or concerns. Direct message me or direct message Denise through Facebook. We would love to chat with you. We would love to give you some. You know, the biggest thing too is, what do I do next? That's what we can help you with. So let us know if you're interested in helping. That's part of this whole process. Is we need people to just.
Yeah, ideas, there are action items, but we need, you know, it's a matter of now, you know, throwing things in motion. So this is just the start. So
Yeah, just, it could have just, if you're at someone, if you're really busy and you can just stand on a corner holding a sign, if we decide to do something like that one day, great. If you're a great writer, great. Let's have you write the form letter. If you're, it really, and we can give you the information to write it. If you're a designer and you can do some web-based or Facebook work for us to make things look better, let us know. If you have a business and you can help us with signage, if we just start to brand this and put some signs up in yards, and you know someone who does, let us know. You know, everybody has a skill set, and everyone has a different bandwidth. So if you work really hard and you can only give us something at once or twice a month, we're okay with that. Whatever you can do, whatever you can do.
Some people are doing research, some people are getting the word out, some people are ready to take action on the corner. So it's just, you know, we're here, and just thank you for your support.
Can we have a flyer posted on the Facebook webpage that we can print out and distribute in our neighborhood? And
You know,
make sure that, sorry,
Yes. No,
I just
yes.
want to make sure that we're all speaking the same points. To Kevin's point about, you know, commenting on the particular things that DEM will be interested in, we really need to make sure that we're telling everyone, if you're going to write a letter, make sure that you include these substantive issues versus just, oh, I don't want it because it's an ugly building or something. So if we can just make sure that we are all on the same page. So if you do a flyer, can you just post it and then we can pull it down and spread it to our neighbors?
And I have one together that I've been giving some of the businesses, but I do want to run it by Kevin to make sure it has enough information, you know, for the public, or it's not the letter, but it just, you know, the points of what is pyrolysis. It kind of says, you know, what is medical waste and how this is going to impact you, and that there is a similar one where there was a sniff test with the odor. So those are some basic highlight points, and then say, come to that March meeting, because that's where we need to be shown. Everybody needs to mobilize and come to that. And if we may be there for 3 hours, but know that kind of going into it, and wait till they call your name, you know, put it on. It's
okay.
You know, but I bet you definitely with your yep.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that out. We'll put that on the Facebook page very soon. It'll be almost like a bulleted list so that you can reference that, and you can, it's the hardest about that. We've been going back and forth creating it. It's almost like, how do you do it without
So much information and too close to it. You know, somebody tonight feels inspired from the slides to take a stab at it, and then we will work with you too, because you know, I realized that I've been looking at it for quite a while and have so many of the details that, you know, a fresh look or a fresh perspective is good as well to get the points out.
But we will have something soon, very
Yes.
soon, just so you all know. Thank you for coming tonight, everybody. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a long evening on top of busy days, but we hope that this was helpful, and please be in touch. Again, join those Facebook pages and connect with us, even if you just let us know by message that you were there, and, you know, and we can connect and go from there. Good night, everyone. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, my cousin.